Come to me, Amina. Join me in the darkness. There is no escape. Amina closed her eyes, her heart filled with despair. She was exhausted, her spirit broken, and she could no longer find the strength to fight. The darkness was all around her, pulling her under, and she knew that there was no way out. With a heavy heart, Amina took a step towards the river, the water lapping at her feet. She could hear Kojo's laughter, his voice urging her to surrender, to give in to the darkness. But as she stood there, on the brink of oblivion, a small voice inside her whispered, "No." Amina froze, the word echoing in her mind. "No," she repeated, her voice trembling but firm. "I will not let you win, Kojo. I will not let you destroy me." With a surge of strength she didn't know she had, Amina stepped back from the river, her heart pounding. She knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult, but she was determined to find a way to free herself from Kojo's grasp. She would seek out Baba Kwame or any other shaman who could help her. She would fight, not just for herself, but for the memory of Abubakar, for the love they had shared. And as Amina turned away from the river, she felt a glimmer of hope. The darkness was still there, lurking in the corners of her mind, but she knew that she would find a way to overcome it. She would find a way to be free. But for now, she took it one step at a time, her heart heavy with grief, but filled with determination. She would not let Kojo destroy her. She would fight and she would survive. The days passed slowly for Amina, each one more difficult than the last. She was a shadow of her former self, haunted by the memories of Abubakar, by the weight of Kojo's constant torment. But in the quiet moments, when the noise of her grief subsided, a flicker of determination began to grow in her heart. She couldn't continue living like this, trapped in a cage of fear and guilt. Abubakar was gone, taken by Kojo's jealousy, and Amina had suffered enough. But now, she had something she hadn't had before: resolve. She knew that the only way to reclaim her life was to defeat Kojo once and for all. Amina made the decision to seek out Baba Kwame, the village shaman, the only person who could help her face Kojo in the spirit world. She had heard stories of Baba Kwame's power, how he had once freed another villager from a vengeful spirit. But this was different. Kojo was not just any spirit. He was powerful, relentless, and dangerous. Still, Amina knew she had no choice. She had to confront Kojo no matter the cost. With a heavy heart and the determination of someone who had nothing left to lose, she made her way to Baba Kwame's hut. The shaman's dwelling was nestled at the edge of the village, surrounded by ancient trees that seemed to whisper secrets to the wind. As Amina approached, she felt a chill run down her spine. The air was thick with the presence of spirits, and she could feel their eyes watching her from the shadows. Baba Kwame was waiting for her. The old man sat cross-legged by a small fire, his eyes closed, his lips moving in a silent chant. The fire crackled and hissed, casting flickering shadows on the walls of the hut. "Amina," he said, his voice soft but firm, without even opening his eyes. "I have been expecting you." Amina sat down across from him, her hands trembling. "I need your help, Baba. Kojo, he has taken everything from me. I need to defeat him, or I will never be free." Baba Kwame opened his eyes slowly, his gaze piercing but kind. "Kojo is a spirit bound by his own anger and jealousy. He has grown strong by feeding on your fear, your grief. To defeat him, you must face him in the spirit world on his own terms." Amina nodded, her heart pounding. She had known this would be the only way, but hearing it aloud filled her with dread. The spirit world was a place she had only glimpsed in her dreams, a world of shadows and whispers, where the living had no place. But I don't know how to reach the spirit world," Amina said, her voice trembling. Baba Kwame stood up slowly, gathering herbs and small objects from the shelves around the hut. "I will guide you," he said, sprinkling the herbs into the fire. "For once you are there, it will be up to you to defeat Kojo. No one can do this for you, Amina. You must be prepared to face your darkest fears." Amina watched as Baba Kwame began to chant, his voice low and rhythmic. The smoke from the fire curled around them, thick and sweet with the scent of the herbs. Amina felt her body grow heavy, her mind slipping into a fog. The room around her began to blur and the world faded away. When Amina opened her eyes, she was no longer in Baba Kwame's hut. She stood in a strange, eerie landscape, a distorted version of her village, bathed in a pale, sickly light. The trees were twisted and dark, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. The air was thick with an unnatural stillness, and the ground beneath her feet felt cold and damp. Amina knew she was in the spirit world. As she walked through the twisted version of her village, she felt Kojo's presence immediately. His cold, familiar voice echoed around her, coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. "So you've come to face me, Amina," Kojo sneered. "How brave of you, but you cannot defeat me. I am part of you now. I live in your grief, your guilt. I know your every thought, your every fear." Amina clenched her fists, her heart racing. She could feel Kojo's presence all around her, suffocating her, pressing down on her like a weight she couldn't shake. But this time, she refused to let the fear take hold. "I am not afraid of you anymore, Kojo," Amina called out, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her. "You may have taken Abubakar, but you will not take me. I am here to free myself from you." Kojo's laughter filled the air, dark and mocking. "You think you can free yourself from me? I have been with you for so long, Amina. You cannot live without me. I am all that you have left." But Amina stood her ground. "You are wrong. I may have been lost in my grief, but I am not yours. You don't control me." The ground beneath her feet began to tremble, and the shadows around her shifted. Slowly, Kojo emerged from the darkness, his form more solid than it had ever been before. His eyes were filled with hatred, his face twisted with rage. He was no longer the sorrowful spirit she had once pitied. He was something much darker now. "You cannot escape me, Amina," Kojo hissed, his voice low and menacing. "I am bound to you by your own fear. You brought me into your life, and now you will live with the consequences." But Amina had prepared for this. She had come armed, not with weapons, but with the knowledge Baba Kwame had given her. Kojo had fed on her fear for too long, and it was time to cut him off from his source of power. "I will not let you feed on my fear any longer, Kojo," Amina said, her voice filled with strength. "You have no power over me." Kojo lunged at her, his form shifting into a dark mist that wrapped around her, suffocating her, pressing into her mind. Amina struggled, her breath coming in shallow gasps, but she closed her eyes and focused on the truth that she had come to realize. "You are nothing but a ghost," she whispered. "A memory trapped in your own pain. I release you, Kojo. I release you from my life, from this world." The darkness around her began to shift, trembling as if in response to her words. Kojo's voice roared in fury, but Amina stood firm, refusing to be swayed by his anger. "You have no power over me," she repeated, her voice rising. "You are just a spirit, and it is time for you to go." The darkness began to dissolve, the mist swirling around her dissipating into the air. Kojo's form wavered, his face contorting in agony as he fought to hold on, but Amina's strength was too great. With a final furious scream, Kojo's form shattered into a million pieces, dissolving into the wind. The oppressive weight lifted from Amina's chest, and she felt a sense of peace wash over her for the first time in months. Kojo was gone. When Amina opened her eyes again, she was back in Baba Kwame's hut, the warm glow of the fire flickering softly in the corner. The air was still peaceful, and for the first time in a long time, Amina felt free. Baba Kwame sat across from her, watching her carefully, his eyes filled with quiet understanding. "It is done," he said softly. Amina nodded, her heart still pounding from the intensity of the confrontation. "Kojo, he's gone," she whispered, her voice trembling with disbelief. I finally did it." Baba Kwame smiled gently. "You faced your fears, Amina. You took back your power. Kojo no longer has a hold on you." Amina sat in silence for a moment, her mind racing as the reality of what had just happened sank in. Kojo, the spirit who had haunted her for so long, who who had taken Abubakar from her, was finally gone. The weight of his presence had lifted, and in its place, Amina felt a lightness she hadn't known in years. But the victory was bittersweet. As much as she had longed for freedom, Amina couldn't shake the sorrow that clung to her heart. Abubakar was gone, taken by Kojo's jealousy and rage, and nothing could bring him back. The pain of his loss still burned deep inside her, but now it was a pain she could bear. "I wish Abubakar was here," Amina said quietly, her voice thick with emotion. "I wish he could see that I'm free." Baba Kwame placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Abubakar's spirit is at peace, Amina. He loved you, and his love gave you the strength to face your greatest fear. You honored him by fighting for your life, by fighting for your future." Amina nodded, tears filling her eyes. She had fought so hard, not just for herself, but for Abubakar, for the life they could have had together. And while she knew she would never forget him, she also knew that it was time to move forward. She had her life back, and she owed it to herself and to Abubakar to live it fully. With a deep breath, Amina stood up, feeling the strength in her legs return. She felt different, lighter, as though the chains that had bound her had finally been broken. "Thank you, Baba," Amina said, turning to the shaman with gratitude in her eyes. "I don't know how to repay you for everything you've done." Baba Kwame smiled, his eyes twinkling with wisdom. "You owe me nothing, Amina. The greatest gift you can give is to live your life with courage and honor. This is enough." Amina nodded, her heart full of gratitude. She knew that her journey wasn't over, but she was no longer afraid. She had faced the darkness and come out stronger, and now she was ready to rebuild her life. As she stepped out of Baba Kwame's hut, the sun was beginning to rise over the village, casting the world in a warm, golden light. The air was fresh and alive, with the sounds of the village waking up, and for the first time in a long while, Amina felt a sense of peace. She walked slowly through the village, taking in the sights and sounds of the life she had fought so hard to reclaim. The future stretched out before her, full of possibilities, and though there were still challenges ahead, Amina knew that she had the strength to face them. Kojo was gone, his darkness banished, and Amina was free. As she stood by the river, the same river where she had once lost Abubakar, Amina closed her eyes and whispered a quiet goodbye to the man she had loved. "I will never forget you, Abubakar," she said softly, "but I will live for both of us." And with that, Amina turned away from the past and walked into the light of her new beginning.